Tonight we're going to do tutorial after tutorial after tutorial until we're blue in the face with tutorials. Starting off with the first one, let me show you where to download these suckers from, and I'm going to put them in a couple of different windows so I can multitask back and forth. I'm going to reiterate some of the points we brought up last week and push a little bit ahead. It'll be a little bit of review because I see a lot of new people here. A little bit of a review, yet we aren't starting over again. We're going to pick up where we left off. This is the iOS development course, and what you're looking at is an intro lecture that overlaps with another intro lecture that I've given already, well, part of. And just in case you want to download it and look at this lecture, because you might want to, especially if you don't have a MacBook with you, it's on the bhacker.com website, and it is under Spring 2013, under the iOS application development course, and under the PowerPoint lectures. And I believe it is this one here. Yes, it is. It's this one here, an Introduction to iOS Development. It starts out with a tutorial of a single view application, and then it goes into multiple tabbed applications, and then it goes into a really cool list box that's embedded in a multi-tab. So it's actually kind of cool in that it's more complex than Hello World, which is what we did or tried to do, but it also repeats Hello World because we didn't quite get through Hello World last week. Any questions so far? This is where you're getting the PowerPoint from. Although it is a PowerPoint, it's a tutorial PowerPoint. It's an older one. I have recently switched to PDFs on the tutorials. They're a little bit easier for cutting and pasting. But this one doesn't have that much cutting and pasting, so we should be good. So for those of you who have Xcode, and you have a notebook with you, don't open up anything yet. I just want to talk a little bit of review to see where we're at. I'm going to skip the introduction because we already did the introduction. But I want to talk about some iOS features that I hadn't talked about yet. So device features. We actually have SQLite, which is a full version of a SQL that's available on the device. And it is a database application if you're not familiar with it. It stores data on the device. We also have data that can be stored in the form of text files on the device. I'm going to have an entirely different tutorial on data, not tonight, but we will cover data in a separate section. Other features of the phone that we're going to cover, but not tonight, are going to be media support for MP3, MP4, AAC, JPEG, all sorts of different types of images, graphics, and miscellaneous multimedia. We're also going to be covering GSM technology and telephony technology, as well as Bluetooth, Edge, some Wi-Fi stuff, camera, GPS, compasses, tons of features. So how this works is I start out with basic stuff, and then I work through examples. And as I mentioned last week, not really a programming course, more of a cut and paste type of course, but I will be explaining some code to you. If you really want to learn how to code, take the class that's right before this one, the Objective-C programming course. Or if not, take that one next. And then what will end up happening is you'll get the best of both worlds. You'll know how to use the GUI controls, but you'll also know how to program them at the same time. So those are the device features. We already have, you guys have already downloaded and installed the iOS and the SDK. So here's where we are at. So this is slide number 7, which is where we're going to start in with for tonight in terms of the tutorial. So if you're not sitting in front of a Mac but can't follow it, I'll try and show you stuff on the screen. If you're looking at it on the screen and not in person and you have never done anything similar to this yet, that's your assignment between now and the next 2 weeks. Go through this thing yourself. It means something different when you do it yourself versus looking at me do it. Because I can show you stuff all day, but until you do it, you're not going to, where was that button? What was I supposed to do with that? It's not going to really click. So open up Xcode. Hopefully you have it on your dock or you have something similar on there. And create a new Xcode project. We got this far last time. And what do we got going on here? Single view application. Just make sure, I'm going to check ahead a little bit on my notes here. Yes, we want a single view application. I'm going a little bit faster than the tutorial, so let me know if I'm going too fast and I need to slow down. Otherwise, I'm going to assume we're all on the same page. And also ask questions as well, especially if you weren't here last week. So. We have different project options when we select single view application. Tonight we're actually going to be working with tabbed application and also single viewed. So the first one's going to be single view. Click on next. Project name, I'm going to call this one First App. And put in your name or your organizational name. Company identifier, we went over this last time. It's usually the URL of your company backwards. Select iPhone. Let's not worry about storyboards. Actually, hold on one second. Let me make sure. Don't click on anything yet. No, this is going to have you click on everything. Let's see. This one's got storyboard. So we'll just click on it all. We'll just follow the tutorial. Doesn't really matter. So click on Use Storyboards. And click on Use Automatic Reference Counting. But don't click on the Using Test Cases. Test cases you'll take in a different class. Normally iOS development courses don't teach the unit testing. I probably could throw something in if people had an interest during the last section, during the advanced section. It's something that you're probably not going to do as a private individual if you're developing, but if you're working in a big company you might be required to work on it. It's unit testing, very similar to JUnit that's built into Eclipse in the development. It's not as user-friendly as JUnit though. And it's very functional, very effective, but I could spend an entire course talking about unit testing and not get any iOS stuff done. So go ahead and click on Next, and then click on Create. I just put mine on the desktop because I can get rid of it easily. You can put it anywhere you want, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't really matter where you open it up from either. You can cut and paste it and put it all over the place. There's no project configuration that's dependent upon any location. So here we go, we got this far last time. What we didn't do last time was actually kind of look at some of the things such as like the supporting icons and stuff. What a lot of people do, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here from the tutorial, but what a lot of people do is they kind of like to configure the project ahead of time with you know, the icons, the supporting orientation, and it's a matter of dragging and dropping and configuring this main summary screen. So you can click on the summary and you can kind of configure the whole thing to meet your needs. This is where you're going to get your splash screen, your icon. It starts. So if you just scroll down the screen, you see where you see the different icon formats for the Retina displays versus the regular displays, higher resolution. Launch images, which are splash screens. You know, like when you start up the app and it shows you this beautiful little company logo for a minute or two, and then the app starts. It's actually pretty easy. You drag and you drop this stuff and you stick it in here. We'll be looking at that further, you know, in another week or so when we want to put something together and you want to be proud of. You can give yourself an app icon and stuff. All right, if you click on the storyboard, it takes you to the main screen as we saw before. This is where we're going to see the XIB file. In our case, we're looking at a storyboard. Storyboard as we saw last week. And this is sort of the review part. Some of you haven't looked at this in a week. The storyboard is our XIB file interface that includes a bunch of stuff. We saw one last week that was an adventure game. If you watched the video from last week, you'll see what that was. Where we added, well, that one we didn't do anything, we just opened it up and looked at it, but you can add different screens to it and navigate from one screen to another screen. And it's really nice actually for working on stuff. Automating and keeping everything together. So we gave it a project option, we gave it a name. Let's see where we are in the tutorial. Source code control. Okay, here, where do we start? Where do we start? So we're going to build now let's see, move ahead here. We've already gone through the terminology, so I'm moving ahead on the terminology, by the way. And I'm fast forwarding to slide number 18. Slide number 18 shows us the blank screen that we've been looking at. And so we have two buttons. Well, the buttons used to be on the bottom of the screen. Now the buttons are on the side. And you can't see the buttons unless you press on this little thing on the bottom here. So last time we went over the screen, the view, we went over model view controller as well. And just as a recap of that, the view is the view. It's the XIB file. The model is the data model, and that's the app delegate. And the controller is this ViewController.h file. So when we wire stuff, we wire it to the controller, and wiring is taking a GUI component and making it work through the ViewController. And we're going to go through all this stuff tonight, so you can see it. But what we didn't see before was this little thing on the side here. It's a small little button They used to put these two buttons down here. One's called the first responder, the other one's called the view controller. This is for when we have multiple views. We can attach them to multiple controllers or all to one controller. By theory, in practice, you're supposed to have one controller per each view. And you're not supposed to have make multiple views for one controller, because then it violates the model view controller kind of philosophy. So, all right, so we have our view controller. That's what you're supposed to be looking at. And your first responder is going to be the order in which the sub-views are nested and how they're going to navigate. It's part of the navigational system. So let's find a label and put the label onto the canvas. So we're going to drag a label and put it somewhere onto the storyboard. If you selected multiple project types, you have multiple storyboards. I selected iPhone. If you selected Universal, you'll see two different storyboards up here, as we saw last time actually. I'm on the only one that I have for this, which is the iPhone. So down over here on the right hand side of the screen, we have our object library. And if you type in on the bottom, label, lo and behold, a label comes up. So take a label and drag it onto the canvas. This is about as far as we got last time, I think, actually, which isn't too bad. In fact, we've gotten farther in the previous course to this one. So now we have a label. And how do we change properties of the label? Well, there's two ways of doing it. We can do it by clicking on the label itself, or we can do it by changing the properties manually on the right-hand side. And I tried to give you the lay of the land last time as well, so you know the different parts. Right now I'm going to click on this label, and I can change the label if I want. And do I want to change the label? Let me take a look at the tutorial and find out. So put a label on here. So double click on the label and add or change it to Hello World. Do the same steps for the iPad storyboard if you're using both iPad and iPhone. So here's the trick. If you've got a universal project type, if you want both screens to show something, you have to populate both storyboards. One storyboard doesn't work for both devices. And if you do have a universal, up here on the left-hand side of the screen, actually I see it now as well, iPad and iPhone. Mine's on iPhone. I can run an iPhone app on an iPad, and I can run an iPad app on an iPhone. But if I want the best results, I create a universal app type, and I populate the screens, and I really have two views and two view controllers, essentially, two storyboards, one for the iPad, one for the iPhone. Otherwise, I'm really creating an iPhone app and putting it on an iPad. It's possible, people do it all the time. You see it in the store all the time. So anyway, when I run the device, the common problem people go is, I ran it and nothing shows up on the screen. It's because you're running it on an iPad and you created an iPhone interface is what happened. So go ahead and change the label. I'm going to change it to Hello World.
I got two phones.
Two phones?
Yeah, and like that duplicated on the right. Is that weird?
One must be at the same.
Well, you can click on one, and actually what happens when you run it? Actually run it right now, see what shows up. It's interesting that you have two. What project type did you select? Single view?
Yes.
Run your apps right now if you're doing it. If you have the same problem, if you have two, he has two showing up, and see which one shows. If one of them's not calling, oh, you only have one showing up right now. Or you have to clear what you had down there. You're being fancy. You're running it on your device.
I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Now you can do that.
I apologize.
That's right. For those of you who want to, I set him up right before the class started on his device, which is why I'm joking with him. But in the next couple weeks, once you get MacBooks, if you get an iOS device, you can get a 1-year free account through IT, a developer's account, so that you can load the app onto your device instead of running it into the simulator right here. But for those of you who don't have a MacBook, you're already lost. You're already down one. So pick up a MacBook first before you pick up, unless you have an iOS device and you get a MacBook, then you're set. But I'll announce when, and you bring it along with the cables that go with the device, and I have to hook you up individually. And it takes about half hour. How long did it take? Maybe about 15 minutes. 15-20 minutes per person to kind of put it together, so it's kind of a slow process. Did you get this showing up?
Yes, I did.
So the other screen, you could probably click on it and delete it. It'll probably be just fine. What you may have done is accidentally drag something over. Or maybe your project type was not set. I don't know. I have no idea what could have happened there. So if you have two screens, run it. Make sure you see Hello World on your single screen as it shows up. He had two, probably. Well, you can do it actually. If you were using the project we created last time, I did this actually. I loaded something over here. If you were opening up the project we created last time, you probably have two like that. So I can just delete it. And if you want to delete it, you just click on it and deleting it. So that may have been the issue actually right there. All right, so let's go back to this tutorial here. So now we have a label on there, and obviously we're going to change the label. Those people who were in the iOS class earlier know how to do that already. Run the project, which we did. We see Hello World appears on the screen. Now we're going to add two buttons to the view, and we're going to find the round rectangular button, and we're going to drag it over. We're going to drag it over twice. Then we're going to start wiring components. I'm going to show you the wiring concept because I haven't really done that in this class. So if I go down here to the bottom and I type in button, now I have round rectangular button that shows up down here, hopefully on your screen. And drag a couple of them over here. Put one over here. Put one over here. My computer's running a little bit slow because I have recording software on there. So there's always a little bit of a delay. So double click on one of the buttons and type in hello, and then double click on the other one and say goodbye on it. So type in goodbye, and then run the project, click on the buttons. Nothing happens actually if you do that. So it's going to come over here and I'm going to say hello. And this button here is going to be goodbye because we're going to program the buttons to work individually. Goodbye. And another thing you may also want to do if you want to work ahead a little bit is you click on the back window. Actually here. If you click on the frame of the window itself, a little blue line shows up around it. It allows you to adjust the window and the type of device this is. I selected iPhone, but we have two different models of iPhones. We have a Retina, and we have a regular. We have all different. So if you look over in the right-hand side of the screen, where's my controller? Size. Says it's inferred. Well, mine says inferred, which is kind of odd. It usually goes to the default. I'm going to change mine here to the 3.5 full screen, and look, it just got shorter. And then I'm going to change the orientation to portrait, which means it's stuck on portrait. If you go inferred, then you have more. It's just whatever the emulator is or whatever the device is doing. Status bar, you can put it on, this is the status bar on the top. I'll put it on transparent black, see how it went light now. So you can change what appears when the app loads up. You can also change the background. As an example, those controls or those properties were for the blue on the screen. So that's the fun. If I click inside of it, I can change the background color, as an example. I'll change it to a little blue color. There we go. I can do the same thing with the buttons. Click on the buttons and the text color. I want the text color now, the background color, shadow color, button color. Actually, I could put images on the buttons as well. The way I put images on the buttons, and we have a full tutorial going on here. Hello, is there room for you? Oh, there's plenty of room up front. Oh, that's okay. That's all right. There's plenty of room for you up there. If you download an image or have an image, I don't actually have any images. If you drag the image and stick it in the project, you can put an image on a button. Does anyone want to see that? Because I can just download an image real quick and do it. Oh, we'll just do it. I'm going to assume you want to see it. Because we're playing about GUI controls and buttons today, and I'm deviating a little bit from the tutorial, but it's fine. Ah! You can't find them because you probably haven't clicked on the right item. It's very important that you click on the item that you want to change. And the screen up on the top where you see the view up here where I'm kind of moving my mouse around, if you click on this side over here, if you click over here, it's gone away. It's disappeared. If you click on it, it'll open it up. You can see. Let me take a look.
It's the parameters that you set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's on the top. You have to open it up. If you've got the sections closed, you'll have to open them up. And remember, you probably did it last time when I was playing around with it. I can close the button here, and I don't see the parameters for the button. There should be just one button that says open up everything. But you have to, over here, you have to click on these little arrows to open up the section, otherwise you're not going to see it. And you're not going to see the controls unless you actually click on them. For example, here I clicked on the outside so you see the blue here. And so then you can see the retina full screen here, portrait. So. All right. People want to see how to put an image on a button or no? Yeah, we want to see the image. Okay, good. So open up. I'm just going to look for something. I just go like dog here or something. Let's go here, dog. Dog.png. There's tons of images on the internet. I should have had one, but here's a dog. I like this one here. So I'm going to save this guy. And I'm going to save it as images. Let's just call it a dog. So I'm going to reuse dog here. Now the dog is going to be resized to fit on the button. So, and I'm only going to do one button. So it may not be resized so that it's recognizable. You want to pick low, like 10 by 10, 20 by 20 icons. I don't know if that was really an icon size. It may or may not necessarily prove to be a productive thing. But I saved it to my desktop, and here it is right here. I got a little dog here. So I'm going to do an easy way to kind of get it into the project. So I'm going to make the window a little bit smaller here so I can multitask. I'm going to take the dog here. And I'm going to drag it and drop it. I can drop it on the top and put it into the main project, which is going to put it in the same directory, or I could put it anywhere I want. So I can find it. I'm just going to I'm going to put it inside of this first folder here. It says first app. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it in the big one. If I put it in the first folder, it's going to put it in my first app subfolder. I'm not going to put it there. Instead, I'm going to put it on the outside folder. So I dropped it. You see, I see a little plus there, and it's going to tell me, do I want to copy it? For some reason, I always copy the stuff in. Otherwise, it moves it permanently. So I'm going to copy it in, and I'm putting it in here. Just leave the defaults on that. And now you see I have a dog up here on the top. So out here, I have the first app folder. If I click it on here, I see I put it in the outer. I didn't put it inside of first app. This is usually people's biggest thing. And then some people will actually move it. Don't move it. The project configuration thinks it's right here. Don't move it. If you want to, take it out, put it back in, and then make a subfolder called it images or something like that if you want. So this is it's easy for me to tell though, and easy for me to reuse this actually because it's right here. And then I can just throw this away. I don't need to keep it on my desktop anymore. So I clicked on the image and I can kind of see it right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the button there. I'm going to click on the storyboard. I'm going to click on a hello as an example, and then I've got here image. So you can see this little drop down box right here. And if the dog is in here, which it is, I see dog.jpg. Click on dog. Now the dog though looks kind of skewed. That's what I was saying before. You're kind of working on the side here. But you see I have a box around the dog still because it's still using the rectangle, round rectangular button motif here. So I'm going to come up here on the type here. I'm going to say custom. Custom's going to get rid of everything. No definition of any borders or colors or anything. So I say custom. Hello. Custom. Custom. Okay, well, normally I don't see a border around it. Alright. And just make sure they haven't changed anything on here. Shadow color. Okay, so custom in the old API used to get rid of the box around it. Actually, let me run it here and see if it does, actually. Maybe it's just delayed.
Are you talking about the white background?
Yeah.
Is it transparent?
Transparent. I probably, they added, it used to be you put it on custom and it got rid of everything. It could be that you have to actually change the transparency on the background. Make the background transparent. Because the custom actually got rid of the side parts of it. I believe it changed slightly, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So normally you would just see the image. Oh, you know what it is? The image has a background on it. That's what it is. If the image, this image out here has a white background. If I pick an image that doesn't have a white square around it, it would actually just show the the white image, but it's actually working correctly.
Yeah, if you just select goodbye and make it custom, that white background.
Yeah, it does go away, but the image itself has a white background, is what I'm saying. So, oh, that looks ugly. Okay. All right. That's the other thing, actually. It looks different here because I changed mine to 3.5, so it skewed it, and I'm running it on a Retina full length. So I'm going to actually switch it back up here so it looks better. So the Retina 4 full screen. Because I'm looking at, there we go. Now it'll actually show on an iPhone iOS simulator for a 4, which is what I'm running. Up here, if I changed it around, which I don't have any options right now to do it because I haven't installed it, I could change the simulator to put it back on a 3.5, so I'm not running it on a 4. But the reason why that image was skewed when you saw it was because it was a 3.5 running on a 4, so it stretched it. So the image was skewed. I switched it back to, if your image gets skewed improperly, make sure you're running on the Retina 4 and not the 3.5, because it's going to reorient itself. But on the goodbye, if you actually change it and put it on custom, you see it will take away, it'll take away the motif. So somebody had pointed out. I'm going to put it back on round rectangular though, so I can see the button. So that's how you get an image in there. In fact, you can take the background itself and put an image on the background the same way, actually. Or you can drag what's called an image box. So if I come up here and I type in the word image, and maybe I want to do that instead of putting it on my button. Right? So I grab the image and I stick it over here. And then I click on the image and I go, well, let's see what image what I want. I want the dog. Not going to be that popular because I'm putting the dog and everything. But I could stretch the dog out so it would put it on the entire background of the app and then put the stuff on top of it if I wanted to. Can layer it. How do I layer it? Well, if I come over here, I can see all these components in a hierarchy. If I don't want to do it manually this way, I could do it this way by moving the order that the components appear, putting the image behind everything else. They used to have a move to back feature as well when you clicked on the image, and it doesn't, here we go. I don't believe it's in there anymore. I looked for it and I didn't see it at one point, but it was too much like a word processor at that point. So now I got the dog all over the place, but it's okay. If I want to, I can also add other components in here, like web views and stuff. We'll look at the web view as well. So not on this project, otherwise the screen is going to get too cluttered up. Yes?
If you put an image on a button, then it still acts like a button.
Uh-huh.
If you bring an image in as an image, then
It's an image.
just an image.
Yeah, correct. This is still a button. And this is an image view, actually. But I can programmatically change the image view to show other images. Actually, I can do the same thing with a button. Later on, we're going to build parts of a tic-tac-toe game. And you'll see you can change a button and put an X on it. An image of an X or an image of an O. Programmatically in the code by a button click. So the button click changes the button to add a different image to it. Very similar to this, but except for in the code we write, dot image is equal to something, or image, change the image essentially. All right, so back to the tutorial. We have our two buttons. We accomplished that part. And run the project. See the buttons. Buttons don't really do anything. So nothing happens. So we have to tell the buttons to do something, which means we have to wire the controls to the .h and the .m files. So we're going to link the view objects to your view controller. And the view controller itself is accessible in a couple of different ways. I like to do it this way. So once I get done putting stuff on the canvas, I like to click this guy and get rid of them. The side properties thing, because I don't like using it anymore, and I want to have more real estate. So your best friend in my case is this editor in the middle. It looks like a tuxedo. If you click on the little tuxedo guy, you see the .h file over here. Last time I went over the .h and the .m, and this is the advantage you have as well as being in the Objective-C course. That's what we're focusing on. But hopefully you know what this is. If not, go ahead and feel free to ask me questions. But we are going to put all the code in between the @ interface and the @ end, because we're defining the interface. And all of the data, this might make more sense for the Objective-C people, but all of the data, which we talked about today, for this particular interface goes in the interface. We wire it to the interface, and then we implement it in the implementation file. So we can wire things, and this is something I didn't cover, we can actually wire things as different types. We have IB outlets, and then we have IB actions. Anything is an outlet, and only certain things can be actions. And that's really all we have. If we were going to wire something, you don't have to do it, but I'm going to wire this image actually. And if I wire the image, I'm clicking on the image, or click on the label, let's just do the label I guess. Click on the label, and you press down on the control button, I think we got this far last time. And you drag it, and you see a blue line appear, hopefully. And you let go, and the blue line turns into a little dialog box, and up on the top it says outlet. And all you have are two different options, outlet and outlet collection. Well, this is only one outlet. I could put a collection out there. The collection is going to be like a list box, or like something that has something else inside of it. So I can take the outer collection and treat it like an outlet instead of each one of the individual components. It's like putting everything all into one bucket and then connecting the bucket so that you can just, hey, show all this stuff, hide all this stuff, or you can do different stuff with it, which is an option you have, but we don't have a collection here. It's just one single item. We'll actually do collections in the next example, but we'll see that in a few minutes. I'm going to call this the label, so I'm going to go label. And under type, the data type is actually a UI label, so leave it on UI label. And as I mentioned in the previous class, the storage is weak. Storage happens to do with garbage collection and memory. And we have two options, weak and strong. Weak says it's going to go away when it's no longer needed. Strong says it's going to stay around for the entire life of the program, unless it needs to be garbage collected. So it probably has something to do with garbage collection. I'm not going to go through a diatribe of the entire explanation over again that I just did earlier. So press on connect. So now you see one line of code. This is a data definition. Excuse me, declaration. I'm trying to make it bigger so I can. Ah, there we go. It's all on one line. So we have the at property, weak, well, I'm going to go over non-atomic later. IB outlet, which is what it's functioning as. The data type is a UI label, and the asterisk is a pointer, and it's a pointer to the data type or the data name that we're using called the label, which is, again, really fast for people who are not in the Objective-C class, but I don't want to bore those guys who just listened to this lecture today on this. However, as I keep saying this over and over again, I'm going to stop saying it because it gets a little old. Watch the video. Watch the video. If you're not in the Objective-C class, that will help you with this class. Just watch the video. If I hover my mouse over, and I don't click on that item here, I deselect the item. If I put my mouse over it, I can see it identified. So I can do this with everything. In fact, I can do it with my image. You don't have to do it with your image unless you put an image on there. I'm just going to call it the image. You don't have to do the image. But you see the data type automatically changes to image view. And we're still working with weak, and we have an outlet here. Same concept as before, and we get yet another property. This one is a data type UI image view. So I can kind of see how that works. That's one type. The other variation is an action, yes. Well, for the benefit of those who just listened to it, like a 20-minute diatribe on this, it has to do with memory management and garbage collection. In a garbage collector, the memory manager goes around and picks up references that are no longer being used. If you call something weak, it's located and it's identified as garbage and it's collected, which means it will have to be recreated if it's going to be accessed again. It's weak, meaning it's not going to stick around for very much time. Something that's identified as strong, never garbage collected. Will stay there forever. What does that mean? If you make everything in your application strong, you're going to run out of memory. Because you're not going to allow the operating system, you're not going to allow the system to garbage collect. You're turning it off. Why do you want to garbage collect? You only have so much memory available. Your program comes up and it loads a bunch of stuff into memory. Eventually you're going to run out of memory. So what it does is it manages the memory for you automatically through automatic reference counting. If not, you do it yourself through alloc, dealloc, retain, release. So a strong is sort of like doing a retain constantly on something. Retain means don't collect it. Leave it in memory. I'm not using it now. It's kind of like people's garages. You know, they get filled up with a bunch of crap over the years because they don't want to throw anything away. That's bad. That's strong garbage collection. A strong technique. Because, you know, one of these days you might need it. But unfortunately, what ends up happening is there's so much clutter in the garage you can never get to anything anyway, and you can't find it. And who knows you're going to use it? You don't even know you have it, so you buy another one. Same kind of concept happens in programming where it's in memory, but you're never going to use it, so you just create it again. And you just keep creating and using memory, and then stuff stays in there, and eventually something's going to crash. Your garage is going to get full, and you can't put anything else in it, which is what happens. So you have garbage collectors come in and have a garage sale, get rid of everything, which is what Week does. Week allows the garage sale. Allows you to go in there and pull everything out. Get rid of it. If you're not using it, you're not using this. You haven't used it in a year. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. It's like people that go and donate stuff to Goodwill and stuff, which is what you're doing. So by default, it's always weak because it's a UI component. Come on, when the string goes away, you really need that button? No, you're on another screen. You're doing something else. If you're on the screen, it's not going to get rid of it. Once you switch to a different screen like you used 10 minutes ago, this screen's no longer needing to be memory. Because when you reload it, just because it got removed doesn't mean it's not reloaded. So on UI components, you always reload refresh. Why? Because values change, you know, states change. If the app just stayed the same all the time, it's kind of a boring app. So if you make it weak, then you can have flexibility for changes in the app, changes in the what the label's called and stuff, and it can refresh more often automatically. So there's some pros and cons to it. It does take longer, actually. Weak makes it load a little bit slower. If you're loading a lot of memory. If you're not, then it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect it. So by default, it's weak. People will put everything on strong, and they'll go, how come my mouth runs so slowly? Because eventually you will run out of memory when everything's on long. Okay, sorry about that for those people who just heard a more detailed explanation of it earlier. These guys are the IB outlets. You see they both say, and the reason why I did both of them is to kind of illustrate a point too. They both say IB outlet on them. So they're both of the same type. IB outlet is, I was describing to someone who's not even here yet. He's not even here anymore. Who said, what's IB outlet really do? It's input output. It's the outlet for the GUI exchange of information. So the wiring of the connection, you're generally sending and receiving to the outlet. It's kind of like Unix pipes. If you're familiar, if you're a computer person, it's like setting up a pipe. You're sending something out for it's I/O essentially. IB action is a little bit different. That's what we get on buttons. So if you right mouse click on the button, right, left, yes, right mouse click on the button, you get this little screen that pops up. You got your choice of all of these different actions that you could possibly perform on the button. And everybody knows you're not going to be able to do anything but click on something if it's on the emulator. You can try it out on your phone, actually, though. You could put in fact, this is how people figure it out. You wire them all. You put something different for each one of them, and then you know when the user's doing it. Because you know you could swipe across an icon or an image button. You could push up underneath it. One of the options here, you could just read them on the screen. Touch cancel, touch down, touch up, repeat. You know, anyway, so I'm going to pick a touch down. Or touch up inside. Here's touchdown. Touchdown's a good one. If you click on this itsy bitsy little, they don't do this for people with bad eyes, but you click on the little button here, the little arrow, hold down the control key again, and you drag it over here, and you let go. You're going to see now, it says up here, connection is now an action, and it doesn't allow you to do anything else. You can't change the action, you're stuck on an action, which is not a bad thing. Can't make a mistake with this one. It's an action. But you can also make it into a property as well. So I'm going to call this a dog button. I know this is going to mess me up in the future here. Dog button. And then we have a couple of different options here on the type. And you notice that the type on the property, the IB outlet, gave us UI label, and it gave us UI image view. That's a strong property that's fixed on that property. It's fixed on the property because we have methods that we can run on those objects, and if we declare it of a different property type, we can't run those methods. So we have choices when it comes to actions. And the choices are to make it generic, which is what that ID is, and by default it's generic. Or we can make it a button if we so please. I'd like to say that, you know, I have a habit of changing it to button. But there's been other times in which I wish I hadn't. and left it on ID because ID is generic. It's a generic pointer to a no type. It's anything. You can do anything you want with a no type. With a button, you're kind of committing yourself. It's a button. So you're saying, what do buttons do? Press, release, all the methods that are associated with the button. But put it on a button just so you're consistent. And over here it says event. And remember all these events we saw over here, just in case we want to change our mind. I'll get you this one second. We can change it here too. We can only wire one of these options per action, but we can wire multiple actions. Yes.
What would be the difference then if it was ID, type was ID?
For the purposes of what we're going to do, nothing. For the purposes of intermediate to advanced level, we can exchange a method that we would run on the button with one that we would run on an image view or a scroll list or something. We can treat it like a generic object on the screen and put it inside of another object. In fact, if everything was an ID, you can make it an array of all of these things. And they're all the same data type. And actually, for what we're going to do with it, it doesn't even be a button. But it's nice to label it as a button because when I select button here and I go connect, I see UI button is the data type. So let me wire it again actually. And you see over here it says a touchdown right here. So if I pick another one of these suckers here and I go over here and I'm going to say, I'll leave it on ID, and this one's going to be don't use because I don't want to use this in my code. When I press connect, I'm going to see ID. The other thing I didn't show you was this last little option underneath. I'll do that right now because I have it in front of me, where it says argument. So this one says sender and event or none. The sender is what you want unless you're going to do some event-driven programming that happened without user control. Kind of rare. By default, it's always sender. What do you think sender means? Well, let me click on this so I can create it. The sender means when I do this particular action, it's going to send a message to the method to say, we want to run the method. It's kind of like in main when you make an instance of an object in main and then you run the methods on that instance. But the user's running the methods, and the user is by sending the message to the object. And the message to the object is done through the physical interface. So the touch up inside sends the message, which is where sender comes into. We can actually do it without that, which is sender and event, which means when the app closes down, or when the app does something, or when you press, actually sender and event would be a good example here. Let's say if I had 3 or 4 different buttons. And when they selected one, the other ones were all disabled. That's sender and event. Because on the first one, we're going to do something, and what we're going to do in that method call is send an event to the other ones and say, hey, disable. You're no longer selectable. The person committed to this button. So we can programmatically change the behavior around. We see it here actually in the method call that we're creating. These are the function method. I call them functions, sometimes they're messages, sometimes they're methods. Whatever terminology you like, probably methods is more common. These are the method prototypes for the ones we're going to implement. I put don't use here so I don't use it. But what we're looking at then in this particular case are 2 separate actions. We can tell that because it says IB action. And the IB actions we're going to call it dog, button, and don't use. So I can kind of change things around on this. And this is a UI button and this is an ID. So it does look different in the method call and in the implementation. I can also make this guy a property. Why would I want to do that? Well, if I'm not interested in the button activity. I don't care when somebody presses the button. I just want to change the image that's on the button. Because I don't like a dog, I want to change it into a cat. I simply just press on the control button, just like the label, and I can drag it, and I can stick it right here. And you can do it. We're not going to really do anything with it, but you can do this as well. But here's what the problem is. Then I got the label, then I get the button actions. Well, let me call it, I don't know, image. No, it's not really an image. Then I run into what am I going to call it? And then we get messed up with the names. So I'm going to call it dog button property. And now I have a UI button is the type, which is the only thing it can be. So I'm back to that. And it looks just like the other, and it's an outlet. So now I have one that comes up here. It says property weak. No, it looks like the other ones, and it's an outlet, but it's a button. So I took a button and I'm treating it like an outlet. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to change something about the object itself, not what its actions are doing, but the characteristics of the object. Like I want to change the background color, or I want to change the image or something. All of those properties that you saw on that left-hand side that we were playing around with can be changed programmatically. So a lot of what you're doing when you create apps, especially this one the first major one we're gonna hit, which is the tic-tac-toe game. You know, you press the button and you're gonna change the label. Well, you need a property for that. You need an IB action. You also need a property so that you can get at the button to change the label. Because the action is just giving you the action. So sometimes you need both actually. One case. You don't need it in this particular case, but also this button here, I didn't wire this one yet, so I'm going to go ahead and wire this one because these are the two we want to use, and it was the image. What do I call that one? The image. And you might also have been noticing something that I've been doing here, just through habit that I'll explain to you. Is I like to put the properties together and then the actions together. So I can easily look to see which one is the property and which one is the action. So you can put them anywhere you want, but if you put them together in groups, then you can easily get it. And then I usually, at the end, take the spaces out, except for I just deleted something there. Yes, I just deleted it. There we go. And now you see, well, I messed it up, actually. Oh, here's back. Okay, good. I usually put the properties together in the IB action, so I want to label another. And this is how I could tell, actually, when I was looking at this, I say, well, IB action, I got the dog button. And I got the don't use one, but what about this one? It's missing, so I'm going to go ahead and click. Because we want to control two buttons. One's going to put a label on, and I don't know what the other one's going to do, but let's see. So what do we got here? Touch down, click on it, press the control. I'm going to put it down over here, and this one's going to be, there's a goodbye button. So I'm just going to put here, goodbye button. It's common to see things labeled goodbye button, whole button, this button, because you know it's a button. All the IB outlets are going to look the same. This label, that label. So it's just, I'll leave it all in the defaults. Actually, I'll change this to the UI label, the UI button. So.
Can you explain what difference between
Yes.
the connection type, which you guys do had, outlet, action?
Yes.
Not much clearer.
Outlet is going to allow us to change this as an object. So this particular object here is a label, UI label. And it's been treated like an outlet. If I come over here and I look at it, I can see the outlet right here. It allows me to change the text on the label, to get the text on the label, to change the color of the label, all the characteristics associated with the object as a label. I can go ahead and modify that through the outlet. The outlet is your communication to the object. The action is when the user does something to the outlet, or does something, not to the outlet, to the object. A user puts their finger and holds down the image. There's actually an action for that. It's like a long press, a short press, a swipe to the right, a swipe to the left. And there's actions for gestures as well, which we haven't gone over yet. Those actions are controlled through the event-driven behavior of the device and its interface, which is coming through a slightly different communication channel, which is triggering a method, and the method here is this IB action. And the IB action is going to be performing some source code when the particular event occurs. So here I actually wired 2 or 3 different events. Well, no, 2 events looks like, but I don't see what the event is. But if I put my mouse over, I can see this. Well, let me look at this guy here. I can see this guy here. If I right mouse click on it, I can see here which events are programmed, and if I were to expand this out, I could see that these are the methods that are going to be performed on those events. It's more event-driven behavior versus I/O, which is what the outlet is about.
Like,
yeah?
is a property then, is that like placing a tag on that text so that if it's clicked, then it will respond? Exactly what this about?
Yeah. It's a tag. So if you, I just like click because it's all touch controlled, but if you if you touch down on the item, it's going to register an event. There's events and actions. It's going to register an event to the controller, to ViewController, because that's the controller that's attached to the XIB. That's going to say, hey, the user touched down, what do you want me to do? Well, this event is associated with that action, that IB action. IB stands for Interface Builder, so it's Interface Builder action that's going to be performed on the event that has occurred. It's event-driven behavior, so events on a phone is all touch-related or gesture-controlled. So sometimes we have events for putting your hand down on it. We actually have events for turning the phone upside down, turning it to the left, the what do you call it? Actually for GPS location, it's all registered through the same framework. It's all 3 events. So it's capturing the events that are occurring, and then it's attaching the events to actions through the IB, the interface builder. And this is the interface builder, which is the XIB, which is your UI, your view. And then your view controller is performing some action, IB action, when that event occurs. And so you can register as many actions as you want for as many events that might occur. And then hopefully you haven't confused the user in the process. The more actions that you register with that, and I say register only because you're identifying it, you're associating some action with it. The more you do, the more control you have over what happens when the user does something. People try to minimize that because it makes it confusing. You know, like if you double click, triple click, quadruple click, move to the left, move to the right, move slightly to the left, move it down, touch it up inside, touch it outside, you know, all this different stuff you can do to it. It makes it hard to use the app, actually. So.
But each element, I don't even know what it's called.
Action?
Each
Call it
one
an
has
action.
a property and an action.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, these are objects.
Each object.
Each one of these guys everything in this language is an object.
Okay.
These are all object components. And you can programmatically make a new UI button, a UI label, or actually UI button as well, round rectangular button, whatever you want, programmatically by making a new instance of it. These are all objects. Objects have properties, and then objects have 3 things associated with them. Identity, states, and behaviors. Through object orientation, the identity is what it is. It's a label. It's a button. It's a text field. That's the identity. The states are the properties. So some languages actually call them properties, you know. Is the light on? Is the light off? Is the color red? Is the color blue? Those are properties in fact, this whole list, when you click on the they used to call this the properties window. Now it's called the attribute inspector. Attributes and properties are very similar, which is why this is called property over here. So it gives you the properties that are, this property allows you to control the properties that are associated with the object. And then the last one is the behaviors. Well, what's behavior? It's action. It's events. Does the object jump? Does the object move? Does the object change a label to something else? Which is what we're going to do. Those actions do something. Start a call, end a call, send a text message. They do something on the device. They make something work. They turn something off. They report on something. They yell at the user, don't touch that button, or something. So, did I answer? I don't know whose question that was. Is it yours? Yeah? That's when you put a bunch of these outlets together in a grouping. We haven't looked at it, and I don't want to look at groups tonight, but we can create a shell and do a hierarchy of subcomponents inside of it. Which, when I say shell, I mean a container. We can create a container, same thing in Android actually, you can create container objects, and inside of the container you have other objects. As an example, you have a list box, and each one of the items in the list box is an image. Well, you've got an image, and you got a list box. And so you have subcomponents, so you can get at the entire container through the grouping, through the through the outlet as a group, versus as each individual single one. So you could wire each of the individual single ones, and then you can also wire the big container as well. That's what that's doing. Most likely what you're going to do in the beginning is just individual. So just leave it on the single.
So by selecting
we are setting the properties.
Mhm.
And by setting by taking it as action, we are setting the action, like
Yep.
what action needs to be performed.
Exactly, the behavior.
And the outlet collection is a combination of two.
It's a collection. It's more than one. More than one object
It's more
together.
than
It's
one,
being
but, what
controlled
we are going-
together.
Yeah, what we are going to define into that, like the properties or the actions or both of them.
If it were a list box, you could do both. If it were an image view and you had sub images inside of the images, it could be, you know, what's really popular right now is to do image mapping. It's like they do it with like website designs. You know, you have this big old list of the United States and you have all the red Verizon dots on it. You click on a state, you know, so you have a sub-region. Well, that's a collection of states that you have programmed individually. So when you click on California, it's going to come out with a bunch of telephone numbers for California. You click on Arizona, it's going to bring up something different. But the whole thing, the map, can show, or it can go away, or you could populate the entire map with red dots for where service is available or something. It's the ability to treat it like a container, or treat it like treat each one of the individual objects that are inside of the container. It's a nesting concept. But you can do that with images, you can do that with list boxes. It's more primarily used with list components. If I get to it, we're going to see it in the tab view controller, where we've got inside, there's certain things that happen for each one of the items in the list. You click on an item in the list and it does something different, which is container. The list is the outer box, and that would be a container. And then inside you have each of the individual objects. All right, are we good? All right, moving right along. But this is actually good because now I know what you need more information on. So it's good. In fact, I always love questions because then it helps me understand.
Can I ask you a quick
Yes,
question?
quick question, yes.
I've seen people before put the IV actions in the .m file, not in the .h file.
Yeah.
Does it matter, or is it like?
As I was telling in the earlier class, if you switch over to this .h and you go over to the .m, you see inside of the .m, you see this makeshift interface here. It never existed until like the last 2 versions of Xcode because people started putting this in anyway. You know what? People just want to put everything all in one file. They don't want to use the 2 files.
So that makes it so you can put it all in one file?
Yeah, but there's another reason for it too. If you have something, all right, traditionally, this is the template or the interface. It's the contract for what must be implemented. Every single object that comes from this interface, in the implementation you have to implement it. But if you have something that you don't want to make part of the interface, you don't want to make it mandatory, and you need to add it to this interface, then you put it in this interface. The exposure is only in the .m, it's not in the .h, which makes it more flexible, so you can supplement the .h behavior and put stuff in here that's not required. Because theoretically, this goes from the old days of C++ and C, where this up here, this view controller at A, which is a precompiled header, and so in C++, it's a small tangent, but it might make some sense to some people. In C++, as an example, you have the interface, which is in a header. It's associated with a precompiled object code, a .o file, that comes out of a C++ implementation. Same concept, .h and .c++, and when you compile it, every time you include ViewController.h, or actually let's make it more realistic, iostream.h as an example, it doesn't go back through and recompile iostream.h. It's storing and it's going to link the object code. It speeds up the compilation, also makes it more cross-platform compatible, but specific per platform, because C++ is not a cross-platform compatible compiler. So there's a different build of the .o for Unix, for Windows, for anything. You know, each platform has a different one. And it has different implementation. Actually, iostream.h does, because we have different hardware on each one of these different platforms. So the I/O calls are different. We still have C in, we still have C out. We still have all those other methods that we're used to. However, they're all implemented differently, which means there's a different C++ file for each one of those platforms. But it's transparent to the user. You write a program for this platform and you include iostream.h, it works the same way. So the original concept was to make it, to save time in compilation and make it a contract so that when you used iostream, you had these methods available to you regardless of the implementation. theoretically, we could have multiple implementations in this project. We could have one .h file with 5 different .m's if we wanted to. And if we did, every single one of those .m's would have to include everything from the .h. It's the contract. So it's the interface which provides the prototypes, methods, and the data that's available to the object implementation. If you don't implement everything, you get in trouble. So if you stick it in the .h, you're stuck. You have to implement it in the .m, and you know, it's not really you're stuck. What ends up happening in Java and some other languages is just, oh, would you like to include the method? And you get this little template that shows up. The method's in here, but the method doesn't do anything. But it's written for you, so you haven't violated the interface contract yet. But if you don't want to do that, which a lot of people don't want to do, and you want to add something to the implementation that's really not part of the interface, then you have the option. Put it in the .m file. No harm or anything done with that. But when do you have a case with this Hello World program? When do you normally have a case where you don't want to put it in the .h file? Maybe for bigger projects you do. You can also just put temporary stuff in here that you want to see visible in the .m. So over here in the .h file, you've specified, this is your data by the way. So inside here you have these app properties get synthesized over in the .m, and they turn into, you get automatic setters and getters and things with that. But you could actually put in here, opening and closing brackets and define, integer I and float f and stuff. And whatever you put in the .h is visible in .m. And it's visible for every implementation of the .m. Where you see you have multiple .m's that are all implementing the same interface. It's available to everybody. If you want to hide the data, put it in the .m. Where are you going to hide the data? You can't put it in the implementation. The compiler won't accept it. You have to put it in the interface. So people who like to hide data, how are you going to hide data? I've got integer I just want to use it for a counting variable. Do I really want to put it in the interface? Is there really data that's part of the object implementation? No. It's a temporary variable that I want to use for counting. Stick it up here. So up here I go like this. I go integer I. I put it in here. And the compiler's just fine with it. So you see that a lot. Because down here I'm going to use I in something. Yeah. Well, anyway, long story short, but it's actually a good explanation because I'm sure you weren't the only one who had the same question. So, what I do is this. I usually go like this and I pull it out. Unless I'm going to use it. Otherwise, I accidentally move stuff over. And here's what you'll do. Here's what you'll do, actually, and this is another reason why I think they have it in here. Before, when we were dragging and stuff over, we had the .h open. Some people will accidentally have the .m open, and then they'll drag and they'll put it in here. If you do that, it'll put it in, well, if you do it correctly, it'll put it in the interface section. So it tries to think for you, and it'll try and put it where, or won't let you drag it in anywhere else, but you can drag it in the interface. And then some people actually drag everything to the implementation file and don't create an interface. Because it's the same thing happens in C++. There's no law that says you have to have a .h. There's no law that says you have to use multiple files either, except for 5 years down the road when you want to reuse your print function. Is it in assignment number 1, number 2, number 3? It's not very self-identifiable. Question?
Can we write that int I in implementation also? Can we define that here?
In the implementation, you can't do that. Implementation is implementing the method bodies of all of your functionality, all of your actions. That's all it's doing. The data, everything for the object is identified in the interface. The states are controlled through the implementation. It's kind of like the way the contract works with the object. Other languages don't have this concept. You would only be familiar with this if you've programmed in C or C++. And if you actually did object-oriented programming in it. So some procedural language, and Java doesn't do this either. There's one file for that. But there's a different concept with the interfaces we discussed earlier. So, yes? Ooh. In the interface file? Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, this is the interface file. You have it up here, like that?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. This is UI kit, actually. These are all UI kit components. there's a hierarchy of objects that we're going to see, actually, maybe tonight, we'll see. I'm talking too much. We have a hierarchy of objects. UI Kit is giving us our UI control. We can actually import in here custom objects, which I haven't really seen very much of. It gives us custom add-ons for the library, which I believe probably in the next 5 or 10 years or so we're going to have people writing their own controls for this, maybe? Who knows? But that's what it's meant for. So you can, in the future, extend the library out. We're going to see when we do a send mail program, we're going to add a framework in for a library of messaging, for mail messaging, which is a really quick, easy tutorial. Hopefully I will get to tonight. That we'll add another import up here that will give us the ability to use other methods and other objects. This is giving us UI button, UI label. So everything's involved with you. It's just like iostream.h is giving us CNC out. This is the same equivalence. Yes?
I was not in the class, so just want to make myself clear that in .h we are keeping the objects, we are defining the objects here, and in .m we are actually putting the implementation of these objects.
Yes.
So how we are making a connection between .h and .m?
.h and .m are both the same object. They're in two different parts for clarification, for interface versus object code. You'll always see at the top, in fact, every one of UI kit.h has a .h and a .m associated with it. The .m is the source code that's being compiled. It turns into the .o or the .so or the whatever it happens to be in terms of its object code. It gets linked with a compiler. It only gets created one time, hopefully, unless you change it. It always stays the same. You import it in, imports like include, and then you have access to the interface to the object, which is why they call it an interface. It's the interface to the object code, because you're not going to go through that precompiled code and look to see what's in there. This gives you a text-readable list of all of the function prototypes and stuff that's contained in that object. Same thing with C++. It's the same reason. It's the same. Both of them make the same object together. So there's no connect. It's the compiler puts it together for you. Which is
Java and .class in Java.
oh, that's totally different. Java is source code. Class is binary or hybrid binary. It's partly compiled, partly
Compiled file, .class will be compiled.
correct. A compiled form of a .java. Java would be source code. This concept does not exist in Java. It exists in C++, which is why I'm comparing it to that. All right, moving right along. No, these are good questions, though, actually. I'm glad you're asking the questions. Otherwise, I don't know what background you guys have either. So we have everything wired. So now we're going to go over to the .m, and we're going to put some functionality in there. First thing I do is like to write the synthesizes, because otherwise I'm going to forget. I'm going to get in trouble. So we have this thing called property and synthesize. If you were in the earlier class, you picked that up. If not, go watch the video. I don't want to go through everything all over again. It's like 2 classes in one, but I will briefly describe what it is. A more abridged version of it. This is like the declaration, and then the synthesize is like the initialization. So remember in your first day of C class or something, or basic, let's say, integer I is declaring a variable called I with a data type integer. That's what property is doing. It's creating the properties. And then we said I is equal to 1. That's when we initialized it. So property is the declaration and synthesize is the initialization. So if we want to initialize these variables, we have to initialize them, otherwise we can't use them, which is the same concept you get in other languages. So you just go at, and you find out when you first type in at, the compiler's going to think for you. It's this one here, synthesize property. That's what you want. And what are you going to do? You just list a whole list of properties. Yes?
Did you take out at interface and at end?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
Because I don't like it. And you can take it out. You don't need it in there.
Does it do anything?
You don't need it.
Okay.
I'm not going through that again. No. I'm just joking. All right. So synthesize, what I want to list is every one of those synthesized properties and one of those synthesized properties that I want to synthesize. Well, I can go back here because I can't remember. This is why I label everything. The label, the button. So what I got? The image, the label, and the dog button property. Those are my properties. I don't have to do this for the IB actions, only the properties. So the image, the label, and I'm going to cut this one here so I don't have to write it again. It's sloppy. So go ahead and do this to yours. I can't cut it. Let's see. Copy. There we go. It doesn't matter what order, and you separate them by commas. So I'm going to go here, paste. And I have the image and the button, I think it is, the label. Yeah, see, it does it for me automatically. That's good. And then put a semicolon at the end of the line. You could alternatively go synthesize dog button property. Semicolon, synthesize the image, semicolon, synthesize the label. Yes?
How do you get the M file up there on the...
Up on the top, you can toggle. If you've got your view set on the defaults, you see a little toggle up here. If you don't see that, you can actually click on the file here and it'll change it over here. Yeah, you can also get rid of this one and have them both side by side. A lot of people like that. It requires a lot more clicking. I don't like to do that. I like to put one on the side and one over here. But if I did that, I'd go like this. What do I want? The .h over here. Now I got the .h and I got the .n. I just clicked on it over here. Whatever I click on is going to go. I got 1, 2, 3. I got three Windows panels actually. I only have 2 of them showing, but I can populate them any way that I want. Another thing too is if it doesn't show up over here in this menu, you can click on the components and change the hierarchy. This is actually, I know it's really hard to explain it, but this is actually this over here. This up here is the same as this over here, and it's just changing it for this window, but it's so confusing, I will admit. It's just, to change it from over here to counterparts, to go through manually and go through you can see each one of the file structures over here. That's why I hate touching stuff, just leave it alone. Alright, now that I have .h.m over here, actually this is not a bad idea because this is how I probably could have, without having to switch back and forth, I probably could have seen what I needed to synthesize a lot faster. So maybe that is a good thing. You can also get rid of this panel over here, which I don't like to do. It's this button right here. I'll get rid of this one. Now I have a lot of real estate. But I don't like that for some reason. I don't know. You know what? There's so many options in this Xcode. That's probably one of the most confusing things for beginners. So. Alright, so the first thing I've done is I synthesize, and remember, you can all of your code goes in between the at implementation and then the at end at the bottom of the code here. And nothing goes outside of it. And we don't have to put in, opening and closing curly brackets either. That stuff is not required. Something I didn't mention yet, I don't think, is these little lines that appear here. And you see the lines over here as well. These lines could be a line or they could be a plus. Actually, I'll change it over here. You got 2 choices. You got a line or you got a plus. And I briefly described this in the earlier class, so maybe some of you remember. One of them, the line, is for an instance method, and then the plus is for a class method. Don't know the differences between them, don't worry about it right now. And know that most of what you're going to be doing are going to be minus signs. And you have to put the minus sign in. You don't actually need the space. It can look like that. But I like the space. It's a little bit more readable. So a lot of people, the first thing I do is I start pulling out the minus signs. What do you need that in there for? But yeah, and you need the minus sign. You have to put that in. So it means it's an instance method. It means only instances of this particular object that gets created are going to be sent this message. The plus sign sends it to all of the, well, it's a different concept, but it's a class level versus an instance. I'll get through that later, probably, or not catch up, but about another week in the Objective-C course, we're going to go through that. So you might imagine over here we've got the prototype methods over here. And another thing I like to do is I like to take the spaces out for some reason. I don't know. I'm kind of a minimalist. I don't like to see it all over the place. That way I can kind of say I got 3 of them over here. And I know on the bottom I will always see the methods on the bottom, which is kind of stereotypical of programming, which is kind of interesting. You always put, there's two philosophies of this. I like to put the data on the top and the methods on the bottom. And then every book I read has the methods on the top and the data on the bottom. So, and you know what? Because I like this because then I can go to the bottom and I know those where my methods are going to be, and the top I could just leave alone for the most part. But I know there's probably a philosophy to that. But all right, so let's go through a couple of rudimentary things about this application when we're running. If we don't like one of the built-in methods, like this one here, did receive memory warning, I don't like it. Take it out. You could take out did view unload. You could take out everything. You can actually take out did view did load if you want. But I wouldn't, because then you might actually end up with an app that doesn't load correctly. Put it back in. Do the undo if you took it out already. But some people are like me, like a minimalist. I take out stuff I'm not going to implement. I'm just going to leave it there. But another caveat to this is that just because I'm not going to implement it doesn't mean that the super didn't implement it. So this object is inherited from an S object. An NS object has an implementation of did receive memory warning. So if I pull out all the memory related stuff, and they have actually reduced this. They have reduced it significantly from the beginning. Now we don't have as much clutter in here, which is good because people just started removing it anyway. This one's actually kind of an important one because this one's going to tell our garbage collector that, hey, we're running low on memory. And although we might not do anything, but we can if we want to. If the app decides that it needs more memory, we can tell the user, hey, could you close some of these screens? You know, you're running low on memory. Save your work. You know. Or the super did receive memory warning and is going to do something. It's going to do garbage collection is what that's going to do. On the view did load, you're going to use this one a lot. You're going to run the view did load on the first one, but this is what happens when the screen first loads up. We saw this in the first class of today. But when something loads up, we can do something. We can set a label. We can, I don't know, initialize stuff, make stuff enabled. So this one's helpful for controlling the activity of the app when it first starts. There is an app lifecycle. I'm not going to go through it tonight, but we will look at the app lifecycle eventually, and you'll see where all those come into place. So down here on the bottom, we have the 3 methods that we created, so we can do anything we want with these methods. Well, we're going to change the label. So I'm going to show you how to write a method, and this will be repeat for the earlier people, but it might not be a bad idea. So goodbye button. It's a good one to start with. When I press the goodbye button, I want to change the label to say goodbye, just so that we can do something. Well, what's the label called? Well, we synthesized it up here, and we called it the label. So the label is kind of interesting. The label text is going to be a property, and because we've synthesized it, we've initialized it. When we initialize objects, which is different from initializing data, so here's the issue, and this is probably a better explanation I gave you earlier. The property is the declaration, synthesizes the initialization. When it's a regular variable like integer I, we're just saying I is equal to 1. When it's an object, we're getting and setting methods, and we're creating automatic behavior for the object. So we have setters and getters that are created. So we have the ability, we don't have a get anything, but we have a set. So we could set the label or give me the text on the label, which gives us automatic functionality because we've initialized the object. For a label, we're just going to set the text or get the text. Get what's on the label or set what's on the label, essentially. And we're going to do that through a method call. The method call is going to happen when we click a button. So if we go back to the tutorial, let's make sure I didn't forget anything, actually. Now I link the label interface at the end. And for those of you who are not following through on this, you can do this at home at a slower pace. Link the rest of the buttons, touch up inside. And here we have our, we called this something different out there, hello press. All right, so slide number 31, make a mental note. We've got the information that's associated with an old style of doing a method, which is kind of interesting because I showed you a different style earlier today. This is going to be a text is equal to something. I believe I did it differently earlier. Yeah, okay. There's multiple different ways of doing this. So I'm trying to make more variety for you. For those of you who were in here earlier, we used the Objective-C approach. This is more of the C++ approach, actually. This is using the dot notation. So usually, when you're in Objective-C, you're going to be using Objective-C methods. However, keep in mind that there's kind of a hybrid between C and Objective-C. And in C, you could actually follow a dot, what's called a dot notation, if you're familiar with C. C++ has got the dot notation. Objective-C does not use a dot notation. They do a message receiver notation, and it looks like this, actually. We've got opening and closing brackets, and a semicolon at the end, and then we have an object, and the object is going to be something like the label. And then we have something like set text. And here's a set text. Actually, I'll show you both. Set text is going to be a message that we're going to send to the label. And the message that we're going to send to the label is to set text to something. We're going to send it to a string. So in here where it says NS string, well, we don't actually have a string variable defined. Most likely you would set a variable for an NS string. It's a string is NS string is just like string. And you would set it to something. Well, let's do it this way. Here, I'm going to call it goodbye. This one's called goodbye, isn't it? Goodbye button pressed. Alright, so this is the Objective-C way of doing it. Where we're, actually let me get rid of that space here. This is the message, and we're sending this message to the object. And the object that we're sending it to is the label. So if we run this program right now, and we press the goodbye button, it should set the label text to goodbye button pressed. Let's see real quick. And while it's doing that, I'm going to cut and paste this here because I don't want to type it. Come on, and cut. Copy. Any moment. While that's coming up, I'm going to paste in here this non-standard Objective-C way, or C++ hybrid kind of way of doing it. It works. It just doesn't work with everything. I don't have a hello button. I have one that's called the label. Nothing wrong with doing this, but we're not using a method when we do this. Let's see if we got working fine. We don't have anything running yet. Okay, when we do it this way, we're actually doing true object-oriented programming, and we're using Objective-C to its fullest potential, which means we're keeping the data private, and we're using the methods, public methods, to manipulate the data by running the public method set text. And we're using this notation of the colon, as I described earlier today, as the, accepting the parameters. If you're not familiar with this, go ahead and look at the video. I don't want to go through that again. But this is the Objective-C way of doing it. We're running the method. This is not running a method. This is setting the text, which is going to be the text of the label, as the property. So it's setting the property of what outside of the method that we created. The method that we created was using the synthesizing the property. Those were the setters and the getters. Set text and then text. So here we're saying self because, well, I'll look at self in a future lecture. Actually, we'll see that next week, next lecture in the Objective-C course. But self is me, my object. If I leave out self, I believe this would actually work because we don't have more than one object in this program. So self is really optional in this particular case. But if we had inheritance going on and I had another object that was inherited from this object and I was in multiple different ISO relationships going on, and I wanted to take my label from this particular object instance identity, and then I would go self to make sure I had, it's like this in Java, or it's equivalent to self in C++ as well. The label dot, and now we're using the dot notation. We're saying we're setting the property text to equal hello pushed. Well, that's actually really goodbye pushed, but yeah, I just cut and pasted it from the lecture. So here, if I press this here, you can see goodbye pressed in the back. None of the other buttons are working, and my images are kind of skewed up all over the place. But my images are too big. Probably want to pick more 10 by 10, smaller icon images is what you want to use. These images are too big, which is why this is messing up. But it worked. It says goodbye button pressed, but my label is not centered correctly either, so it has issues. I was a little sloppy with the interface. But I can see the button functionality works. If I do this, this is going to work as well. It's just a different way of doing it. You're setting the property instead of using the method. For the most part, I don't really care what you do in the beginning of this course, but later on you want to go to this method. You want to use the Objective-C method call to change the data, to change the properties, because it's less dangerous. And sometimes the implementer, whoever wrote the method, actually may have written a special set text message that tests for something. As an example, let's say you were writing a set password, and you are going to change the user's password. Maybe there's rules, like how many characters it has to be and how long. If you just set the variable to the new password, not doing very much. If you run a method that runs this rigorous test to make sure that the password meets all this different criteria, and then if it doesn't, it won't do it, and if it does, it will. You have more control over the behavior through the method is my point, than just changing a variable. Changing a variable is very dangerous. So that's why you probably want to do it this way versus this way. But if it works, it works. Right now, you're just trying to make it work. But that's one of the options you have. Now, obviously, you can probably perform the activities that are needed for the other two buttons by doing the same thing. You could put another label, and this is what I want you to do, actually, for those people who are doing this. Go ahead and put more labels and more buttons and more stuff on there and see, wire them up, and then start playing around with the properties. So, setting and getting text is one. You can also, yes?
The label.text equals hello pushed. What is that?
Oh, should say goodbye pushed. But it's in the same method body.
Right. And why is it there?
It's there because these two, oh, okay, so whatever. These two lines of code are doing the same thing. This one's calling a method to change the text that's appearing on the label. This one's changing the property directly without using a method. It's changing the text.
So
this one is more kosher because you're going through the rigorous standings of whatever method was used. And then in this particular case, there is no rigor. We're using a synthesize, which means the compiler did it for us automatically. So if, let's say for example, we wanted to run a set text method, this is a set text method that's running, we can actually implement a method in here to set the text. And if we did that, it would override the built-in one. And then that set text would go through this rigorous thing to make sure your password met all of these different requirements. If not, it would come back and say, sorry, not changing it, and don't change it. This way here, there's no method being called. You're just taking that property and changing it directly. Going out to that label and changing the property of that text automatically without any method running.
So does that goodbye pushed show up?
If I were to, actually in this particular case it will, because this one's going to change the label to goodbye pressed, and then this one's going to change it again to goodbye pushed. I put them, you only need one. I put them both in here to show you the differences between the two. You only need one. If I were to pick one, I'd pick this one right here. And you can do it this way though. For hello world, this is perfectly fine. So you don't need both lines. So. And this was slide number 31 actually that has this. There's two different ways of doing it, whether or not you're running a. So. Alright, so we stopped on slide 31. Let's see. Let's see if this tutorial has anything else interesting to it. So you want to do the same thing, either one of these two methods. You know, you put them on the rest of the buttons are going to, when you press the dog, it should change the label. You can, experiment with other functionality. If you've got one of those Objective-C books I recommended, those PDF files on the internet there, you can see, probably look up properties, or look up UI button, UI label. You can see how to set the background color of the label, outside of just the text. You can change the button, put something else on the button, do all sorts of things. Yes?
Yeah, the set text that was in there, it's a method.
Mm-hmm.
So can we access that method
Oh yeah.
What is that?
We didn't implement it. Instead, that's a very good question. We didn't have to implement it because we used property and synthesize that did it for us automatically. When we do property and synthesize, we have two methods that get implemented for each automatically for each one of these properties. If we don't like that, then we do this. We come out like this and we go void set text. And what we've done then in this case is overridden. We can override the built-in synthesize by creating our own method. And our own method comes in two different forms. The own method, here it is here. So now this set text will run, but we have to actually put some parameters in here because the parameters that we're going to want are going to be, to accept a string that we're going to put on the label. So in here, this is when we would normally put in self. In fact, here's another experiment you can do. Just run it this way. Oops, I'm sorry, that you should say void on it, not an E. Self dot the label label. Oops. Dot text equals something. Now down here, because I have this method up here, I'm hard setting it to something. It's not actually returning or doing anything. I've set the data type as void. And just for review for some people, this is the data type, this is the name of the method. So down here I can actually just run set text now if I wanted to, like this. Actually, I could do it this way, more properly. What did I call it? Did I call it set text? Don't know what I called it. Set text. I've got a problem here. Let's see. Yeah, no visible interface. Well, what did I just do? I added a method to the .m file, but I didn't put anything in the .h file. And there's no visible interface that matches this method. So I have to go back. I have to do this. In fact, this is the easiest way to do it, just cut and paste it. The method prototype is just the header of the method declaration. So if my cursor would, oops, paste, there we go. Go back to the .m file, excuse me, back to the .h file. Oh, it's on the side, that's why I won't select it. And let's put it on the bottom. Paste. And put a semicolon at the end. And it's going to tell me, what did I leave out? I left something out. Expected the semicolon after method prototype. I thought I put that in there. Okay, there we go. You know, my computer is running a recording software and it slows down. It slows Xcode down. So I put it in, but it wasn't fast enough to catch it for the error checking. So when I told this to class 2, this happens to me all the time, but if it happens to you, just know that it's wrong. Now it has an underline here on the this one. It means that the compiler just hasn't caught up. In this case, it hasn't caught up either. So the trick to the whole thing is go up to product and clean. And it will catch up and then clean successful, and then the error message goes away. Nope, it's back. I have not. It's actually complaining about the label. Do I not have the label? The label. Set text. No. I will just leave it alone for right now. But anyway, I was just demonstrating the concept. You can override the set. If I were, let me just take this out so I can figure out what's going on up here. But this is the set. There's also one called get. So there's no get though. It's just returning it. So this one would just return automatically. So then we would call this text, and then we would ask for the text. Actually, the set is void, which is kind of interesting. So I don't know. Anyway, long story short, we'll get into writing methods in a different lecture, but this one was supposed to be showing you the behavior of the properties in the synthesize. It may be complaining because I already have it synthesized. If I take out the synthesize, it would probably work just fine. But using a property in a synthesize creates the set text for you automatically, and then you call text instead of get text. Other languages you do it manually and you write set text, get text, set this, get that. And setters and getters is what they call, or accessors and modifiers, depending upon what book you're reading. Long story short, do you understand the concept? Or okay, good. But you can override that behavior, or you cannot use the behavior. So this, yeah. This memory warning here, did receive memory warning is from the super object or from the current object. If the runtime environment sends a warning back to the app, what should the app do? And if you had app behavior, you would dispose of resources that can be recreated because you've allocated too many resources. Because let's say, for example, you made everything strong. Well, destroy those strong ones and get rid of that stuff. And if you destroy it, then it can be recreated. So it might actually change stuff to weak for you, or it might actually remove objects that are no longer being used. Do some, do some deleting of the, it's not called delete, it's called release, but release, retain if you're doing automatic garbage collection. If you're getting memory errors that are coming through here, usually there's an NSLog message, and the NSLog will come down into the text portion of the compiler, or excuse me, Xcode system. NSLog, by the way, only writes to Xcode. It doesn't write on the device. In fact, what you're doing when you deploy the device, the app, is get rid of all your NSLogs, because that slows your app down a little bit. But if you put an NSLog in there, in here I'd put the NSLog and say low on resources, then I'd know I have a serious issue with my application. Because you're really working with a runtime environment that has limited resources. And you have no control over it. All you can tell is when there's a problem. So that's the code that you would put in here. So. All right. Oh, yes?
When I tried to run it on the iPhone simulator, I get no exception. And I don't see the app on the phone.
Come see me after the class. It probably, or have you tried cleaning it? Clean it and then rerun it. So stop the simulator, close the simulator down completely. Come up to Products and go into Clean. It shows what?
MS unknown key exception.
Unknown key exception. Yeah, I'd have to look at it. But if you save it, don't delete it. Save it and I'll take a look at it when the class is done. Or when we have a break or something. Or when the class is done. Alright, so going back to the tutorial, I believe we're almost over with it, actually. So changing the UI label here. Touch-upping inside, the rest of the buttons. You can probably figure out what you're supposed to do with the rest of the buttons. It's the same concept as the first button. Change the UI label. So now what we're going to do is, unless people want me to continue with this one, I'm going to assume you guys can change buttons and stuff. Let's look at a tab controller. A little bit easier, a little different project type. So go ahead and destroy this thing, we're done with it. Actually, you don't have to destroy it. But if you have one of those books, as I was mentioning before, yes, go ahead and see if you can change the image, or download some better images and see if you can get some activities to occur. Not a bad way of figuring out how to do stuff. There's properties on everything. Figure out how to change the properties, figure out how to do something. What you're going to need to do is find a reference book for this. Because nobody sits around and memorizes all the different ways of adjusting the image or the background color or something. We will have one that we will actually look at the background color of the window, and that might actually be, might be tonight as well. But I want to go through a simple tab controller. Tab controller. So you use the device, you come up with apps that have a tab controller, which are little buttons on the bottom of the screen. So several of them have them built in. So for the next exercise, we're going to create a simple tab controller. So we're going to create a new project, and we're going to create a tabbed application interface, because I want to show you a different application interface. So go ahead and go back to Xcode. I have a tendency to, well, it's a habit of shutting things down and bringing things back up. So it kind of just cleans things up for me in the memory, especially because I have so much stuff running. So you might already have it open. You can go to Project, File, New. So now instead of clicking on the single view application over here, click on Tabbed Application. Let me just make sure that's the one we want for this one. Tabbed Application Template, which is this one over here, the one on the left-hand side. The options are going to be the same. So we're going to click on here. I'm going to call this Tabbed Hello And then we're going to use an iPhone storyboard. Let's see if we want to here. Let's see. Let's click here. iPhone, use storyboard. Yeah. Don't use the unit text. And then look at the storyboard. So let's see. We can go ahead and just leave on the defaults. If you have this selected, use storyboard and use automatic reference counting, but don't select a unit test. And all the rest of the information should fill in for you automatically at this point. And then press on create. I have it on an iPhone app. You might have it on Universal. It doesn't really matter which one. And give it a few minutes. And then now if we look at the storyboard, we see an interesting, hello, it's waiting. The computer's doing a lot of thinking tonight. I might have to switch to my other one. This guy's only got 4 gigs of RAM on it. My other one's got 8. So I need to switch, it looks like. So let's see. We have an interesting looking thing going on here. So if you look over in the right-hand side, we see tab view controller, collection view controller, navigation controller. These are all different types of controllers that we can add to the project. And in here, we're looking at the tab bar controller, which means we have a first and a second. If we run the program, we see what we get. And we get tabs that appear on the bottom. This is quite popular, actually. It was for a while. Still kind of used in a lot of apps, yeah?
Do you have an extra charger?
I have one for the Air. I don't know if that's going to work on yours, but I don't have any extra charges. Did you run out of power? I don't know if his Air is going to work on that, though.
I haven't seen that.
The mag lights are different. You could try it. The connector's the same, but I think the wattage on that. Yeah. You're going down lower because that probably takes higher memory, but we'll see. I mean higher. Meanwhile, back at the wrench, the app is loading. That may or may not charge because I think it went from a 65 down to a 50 on the power between the Air and your book there. So. But you're going down, so it's probably not going to fully charge it, but you might get some power.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so
Oh, okay,
much.
good. All right, so now we got this is good intermission, actually. Now we have the tabs up. We have the first one and we have the second one. So to change the icons, it's a matter of, we know how to do that. It's a matter of dragging and dropping images, putting into the project, clicking on the tab and changing the icon for it. You can actually drag it onto the tab in the Xcode project. But this gives us now the ability to add more tabs. We can have 5 or 6 different tabs down here, and we can have different views. So it's a way of controlling. And so this is what's called a tabbed bar, because we have a bar on the bottom. We can also do what we saw last time with the storyboard and create like an adventure game or something like that that also has different navigation to it. And we look up here and we see that the 2 screens, don't be afraid of the 2 screens because what you're looking at is, instead of a single view, is a multiple view. And it's automated for you automatically. And it demonstrates another point I wanted to point out, is that you might notice we have first view controller and then we have second view controller. We have 2 different view controllers for each one of the windows. So in the storyboard, we selected the storyboard option. If we didn't select the storyboard option, we would have view1.xib and, I don't believe it's called view, it's called tab something xib, 1 and 2 xib. So they'd be separated out, which is kind of like why people like the storyboard, because it puts it together for them. But just keep in mind, if you click on the second view controller, oops, let's go back here. If I'm adding something to the second view controller, and I click on the editor, it brings up automatically the second view controller. And then I'm not going to go through very much with this because it's the same thing we just did before. Experiment with this as well. This is probably the easiest one. You can come down here. Let me get rid of this guy here. It's the same as the single view. Over here, whoops, let me get rid of this here. Thought I got rid of the editor. Come back. Oh, my computer's not happy. Alright. On the bottom of the screen, if you click on it, you can say my pictures. Whoops. If I click on the text, I can say my pictures or something. And it changes it over here. My pictures now says over here. So I can also click on the sky here. And then on the properties over here, as soon as it comes up, it's a little bit challenged right now for some reason. My computer's not having a good day. I can change the properties over here if I could have it click on it correctly. Which is basically the same thing as we were doing before, so you can click on the entire window here. And you see first view controller up here, and you can basically scale it, do whatever you want to change the way that it actually, it folds from left to right to left, from top to down, bottom up, the transitions between the two screens, all sorts of different things that can be done with that. And in the tutorial, we're going to add another view controller. And we're going to see how that's done, along with the views. So you look at the story bar, and you can see this is what we just saw live if you're looking at the tutorial. Now we're going to add a new class that's going to be called Third View Controller. And I'll show you how to add another. I'm going to add another controller to this. So we want to, 2 is not enough. We want like to have 4 tabs or 3 tabs. So on the left-hand side, you right-click on the tab demo folder, and then select New File. Well, over here, tab demo, I called it tabbed hello. And I'm going to go File, File, New. And I'm going to add a file to it. Where's it going to be? Window. I think it's going to be File, but let me just double check. So you're going to add a new file. And it's going to be an Objective-C class. And so we're going to add a new view controller as an Objective-C class. And for the class, we're going to type in third. So we have UI view controller is what we're going to extend from. So Objective-C class, and we're going to go next. And so now where it says NS object, we're actually extending from view controller. So we change this guy over here to UI view controller, which is part of the inheritance. So we can create a class that's going to be an object. We can create a view that's going to be extended from view. This particular object is going to function as a view controller, so we're going to extend from UI view controller, which is going to give us XIB files if we want it, or it's going to give us other options. I'm not going to select the with XIB for user interface, or actually I can. It would give me the user interface. And what it's going to do is going to add another view controller. So up here I'm going to type in third, because I already have a first and a second. So I'm going to get a set of classes that's going to be put in here, yes?
There is a view controller under objects also kind of track.
Go back.
Yeah. No, under objects.
Oh, on this screen.
No, in the editor you have objects from where you pick up label and buttons.
Bottom right.
Bottom right?
Yeah, all the way over to the right. And then down. It's headline object.
Just cancel this and it will come on the storyboard.
Cancel this one, yes.
And on the right bottom corner you have objects. There is view controller. Can't I do that same thing by dragging view controller?
Oh, here.
Yeah. Is this
No, what we're doing is adding the class files. You can't do it. We're going to do that. We could do that. If we do with the XIB, and that's a very good question. If we do the XIB option with that, we get the interface added to the storyboard along with the set of classes. If we do this, down here we can have, let me type in view controller. We can add the view, table view, here's a view controller. We can go like this and add it. But we don't have, oops, I just put it in, oh, there we go. We can add it. Well, I don't know if it got added or not. I don't know what happened with that. Manually. But we don't have a set of, view controller for it. Yeah. So to follow a nice pattern following a model view controller, you have a separate view controller for each one of your XIBs, or for each one of your windows. So if we put a third view controller in here, then we have the same pattern set up. But yes, you can drag and drop and put it in, no problem. You can also put in other types of controllers. And you can put in controllers inside of controllers. Nesta, you can put like a tab view along with a collection view, and you can mix and match the controllers and run multiple things, which really, you know, it's kind of like I used to say for website development, it's kind of like putting a clown in a blender. It just looks like a clown in a blender. It's just too much. It's just like all color all over the place, and it's just, you can really get carried away with some of these apps. It's just not so good. Anyway, so I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to add the controller because I want to add it to a new screen and show you how to put the screen in, actually. So here I'm going to go File, New, File. I'm going to go back where I was before. We did that. I think I showed you that last week. We just added a view controller, but it was really not quite the process you want to. Well, if we could have continued, we could add the controller first, then add the class second. We could do that if we wanted to. I don't know. I always like to add the classes first because then I can change the controller to meet the class that's already there. I don't know. All right, let's see. So we're going to call this third. So we have third view controller. Good naming convention. Leave the targeted for iPad and uncheck the XIB because we're going to use the storyboard and we're going to drag it in, actually. So we're not going to create a separate XIB file, so take this off. So if you're following along, make sure to put third on here. Third view controller and extending UI view controller. If you don't put UI view controller in here and you extend from NS object, you're going to get the wrong set of classes. And we'll see what the class looks like, and you'll see it extends from UI view controller. All right, so now you have a .h and a .m file that work along with it. So if we do that, you should see this. Whoops, didn't want that. Let's get rid of this text. So I've gotten rid of the XIB file. And now what I'm going to do is save it into the project folder, and then I'm going to take a look at the combination of files that we're going to get from this. And it should show up momentarily. Yep, there it is. Okay, so now we can see in the .h file that we have the, there we go, just took a few minutes. See where I see the colon and it says UI view controller? So in the previous class we saw this NS object in there. So I know I'm extending now from, or inheriting from UI view controller. Alright, so we can see we have nothing in here. We just have basic functionality. Well, we don't really have anything else in the first view controller or the second view controller either. So we're going to build some of that stuff in. So if we take a look back at the tutorial, and we're following along, so we have skeleton classes that are created. Now we're going to add the view controller, like what we did last time. So we're going to drag and drop the view controller, stick it in the storyboard after we've added it, and then we're going to connect the view controller. So what we're going to get is a little picture that looks like this. Well, if we look at it live, click on the storyboard here, we see them here. These are the view controllers. So here's the first view controller. Whoops, there's the second view controller.
You can double click on the grid and it'll show everything.
Yeah, it will. It will, yeah. But anyway, I'm just going to get rid of this side screen here. So I'll get rid of the other screen. Yeah, and I think next week I'm going to bring in my faster computer. But yeah, I can zoom it out too. Let's see. Let me zoom it out. Excellent idea. Let's zoom it out. All right, so I'm going to take the view controller. Let's see. Yeah. Towards the end of the night, I forget how to, here we go. Drag, drop, stick it in here. There we go. We're in here now. And then on the right-hand side of the, I can't get rid of my editor for some strange reason. No, this one right here. Ah, nope, I got rid of it. Actually, the little button there gets rid of it too. Yeah. But the little button is hard to see. So this is going to be my third view controller, and it looks looks kind of good. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the tutorial, take a look at it, and see. So I got that. So notice the storyboard does not have any arrows pointing to it. It's sitting off on its own. The developer has to actually connect it. So we're going to go from the tab view controller to the new view controller to connect it. So we're going to hold down the control key, the same way as we wire the other components, and then we're going to left click drag from the tab controller to the new view controller that we just added, which tells the storyboard that the view is going to be accessed through the tab controller. So let's see if this works. Now, let's see, tab view controller. So we have to wait. Actually, the trick to it is to make sure that you have the whole thing highlighted. And then we got choices. The modal, push, or custom in terms of the relation. Or we can have the relation. So I'm going to go back here to see. I think it's going to be modal, but let's just take a look here to see if it's going to tell us which one. And it will. It says relationship. So we want to select the relationship. So we set the relationship to the view controller. And I believe that these options have changed since I've created this tutorial originally. And I don't think we have, let me go back here and control drag it over and see those options again. And if I take relationship, I don't know if that's going to be doing the same thing. Yeah, that looks like it. So I've selected the option underneath the relationship. In this current version, they've changed it. In some of the other storyboard versions, and some of the other controllers, let me just bring that up again so you can see what I'm talking about. We were just stuck with push, modal, and custom. Or we had relationship, and relationship looked like this one here. That was all on one line. The relationship said view controllers. So it's now on two different lines, and underneath it, it says view controller. So I selected the one that was on the bottom. So if I do it again to bring up that window.
So select view controller.
Yeah, let me bring up that window again for you. Hello. What happened? 1 second, as I'm clicking away. Let's see. Down here, where it says View Controllers, there's two now. It looks like it appears to be two options now instead of one. Before it used to say Relationships/View Controllers. So now it says these other ones here are from when one screen is going to another screen. So the view controller is the one. Oh, now I added two. So if I added two and I don't want it, I can click on the line and I can press the delete key. It gets rid of it. So you can add multiple controllers. You could also take and put in a view. Let's see. Actually, let's do this one again here. I'm going to put in another view controller. Don't know if this is actually going to work. Let me just, now I'm winging it. Let's see. Yeah, it will. So this one is going to go to this one. And I'm going to push it. Yep, it will work it. So this one will have a button or something on it that will bring up this one. This one's not being controlled by this one anymore. So I could nest controllers in here if I wanted to. So I got from this screen, and this is when I was talking about a clown in a blender. I could essentially put a clown in a blender here and make this all confusing for you. Because I can put a subcontroller on a second or third screen that's coming out of a main controller, and then add other stuff to it. So you really just get lost in the application at one point. So I'm just going to leave it here. But I do have this guy up here that I created. So I'm going to go back to my instructions to see how I'm going to connect the .m file and the .h file. The third view controller needs to be connected to the screen. So it will control the activity on there. So I've created the relationship. And now I can label it so I don't forget it. All right, let's label it. It's too small. Third. And then you can actually, I forgot to point out, you can notice over here, I've automatically got my pictures second and third. Because remember, I changed it to my picture. So now I got my picture second and third. I have 3 buttons on the bottom now instead of 2, which is what I wanted. Okay, so I can click on the text and change it before I forget. And then I'm going to left click on the new view controller on the right hand button here. So on the new view controller, I'm going to left click on it to select it basically. So I don't want my pictures. Hold on, let me go back to third, which is probably a good reason why I labeled it. So let's see, left click on it. And then I see the class, it just doesn't look like it's selected for some reason. Oh, okay. Oh, there, no, it's selected. Okay, good. Let's follow through our instructions here. Left click on the new view in the storyboard. And then there's, on the icon in the right-hand button here, there's an icon up here. It's this guy right here. This is going to be for our custom classes. So we have our identity. We're supposed to, and this is actually following an older interface. So let me see where they moved it to. Type. Ooh, that's good. Storyboard. I'm on the storyboard. I'm not on the controller. Let's click the controller. Now I'm on the controller. 1 second. There's a toggle to switch the view controller that's associated with it, and it's a toggle on the top, usually in the class section. And I'm trying to get the custom class to show up, and I believe that the option has changed. So it's the middle button now. It's this one. Oh, it's this one. This one? Yeah, here we go. Here we go. So the class I'm going to change to it is going to be my third. Wow, everything went away. What happened here? Bummer. What happened? I believe my computer is not happy. Where's my storyboard? Oh, I'm back. I'm having a few issues with the computer right now. Yeah. Well, I'm having, yeah, I don't know why everything went away on me, but we'll follow through the screenshots and we'll see how it's done. Alright, so the arrow in this slide needs to go over to this one here, which actually is selected. Actually, so it is the same. It hasn't changed, it looks like. So you click on the Identity Inspector, upper right-hand side. Notice that the class is currently set to the UI view controller, but it's different because mine is set to the UI tab bar item, which is what I've clicked on actually. So I didn't click on the view controller, which is why it's showing the wrong item. So I clicked on the bottom. So if I click on the top here, UI view is the view. So I need to click on the I need to click on the controller. If I click on the controller, which my mouse is having some difficulty with right now, I'll see that in the controller window, I will see up here, it'll say UI View Controller by default. If you click on the little toggle button, which I've been trying to do, if you have the actual view controller selected, it'll allow you to switch between first, second, and third, and you can actually change it to third view controller, which is how you're associating the view controller with the classes that are going with it. Yes?
You know, on the storyboard,
Uh-huh.
at the bottom underneath it, how it has the three colorful things, the yellow thing, the red thing, the green
Yeah,
thing.
you can click on those.
The yellow thing is, that's the controller, right? So if
Yep.
you click that, if you go ahead and click that one time, the yellow thing is gone. That.
Ah,
then
I got it
changes
selected, yes. Thank
So
you.
then that's the yellow thing, right?
Those buttons are new, by the way. This will allow you to change it. Here we go. Thank you, third view controller. You have to have patience and not trying to be teaching a class at the same time to experiment with it. I'm looking at this going, something's wrong with this. Well, the thing is you need, like I was telling the class earlier, the blue line that goes around, I wasn't getting the blue line. So on a normal single view, you click on it. You have to click on it right, though. You have to click on the window just a certain way, and I can't describe how to do that. And it creates, and what I was trying to do is get that blue line, but yes, excellent point. That little yellow thing, will put it up for you. Anyway, so what I've done now is I've changed the view controller to the third view controller, so that is now associated with this one. So if I were to click on the tuxedo icon and I've got the third view controller created, selected, let me get rid of this now. My screen is so big. Let's see, make this a little bit smaller. Ah, there we go, that's better. Now I see I have the third view controller that comes up, and now my interface is identical to my single view controller interface, so I can go ahead and drag and drop and stick stuff on here. And I have this guy here that's now connected with this one. I could easily create a button or something that says next, next, or put a tab on the bottom or something that calls this screen. This screen will control the screen back and forth. One will push to the other. So it's just another way of navigating. A very popular approach.
You
Yes.
have to make another controller thing for that new one
Nope.
that you-
No, this one here is going to be shared by this one.
So if you nest them, then you can keep it all inside that.
If I want to, and if I can actually, oh, I got it selected, good. If I want to and I can select it, then I could change the class if I wanted to. I could also go back through and change any one of these other classes if I want to.
When you were talking about programming methodologies and best practices and stuff,
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's not a good idea. However, if these guys are going to work together, and let's say, for example, one of them's going to be in English and the other one's going to be in Spanish or something, and actually, if that were the case, I'd have two of them coming out of the same controller. And then when the user selected an option, it would go one direction or the other. This, in terms of best practices, it's better to actually create, you're right, it's better to actually create another, like a fourth view controller for this guy here. But you don't have to, depending upon what you're doing with it. So there's no law that says you have to create that third view controller either. But who's going to control it? If this guy is just going to show a picture, which is easy. If all you're going to do is drag an image box, let's say, and put it on there, and you're going to have the button that's going to show you a picture. Like, for example, you have an app that's, say, your college campus map. Let's see the map. Do I need a controller for that? But I want a window to come up that's going to be different. If that were the case, I'd put a view inside of the same controller. We have a view in here, which is interesting. A view that's inside of the controller. And if I take the view and I just stick it on there, it's not going to come up, is it? Page view, here we go. Table view. One of these views, there's a view too, just a generic view. Table view, custom view, image view, text view. I can just pop this guy in here. Well, he's not big enough. Let's make him big enough. Hello. Put him inside. Oops, not going to go in. I need to make him bigger. There we go. Now he's going to go inside, hopefully. There we go. Or I could put another sub-view inside of this view as well if I wanted to. And just switch between the views. It's a hide and show.
you don't need another.
No, this is kind of ridiculous. I don't really need another controller for that. What the interesting thing is that, I've added it, but over here I only have 1, 2, and 3. I don't have that fourth one in here. So, which is kind of the trick to it. Alright, so if I'm taking a look here, I know I'm kind of running low on time here, but let's see. We got the third view controller, and we put that in here, and then so let's replace the first view controller. So what you can do, I'm not going to finish this because this is going to delete the rest of this tutorial is going to delete a controller, add a new one in, and link it up again. It's just practice working with the view controllers along with the views, with the view controller component. So it's linking them together. So the tutorial has you replace the first view and then add a table view controller. Same thing as the view controller. It's just a table view, different format. Drag the table view controller in, change the navigation. It's not a bad thing to pick up on. So if you started this tutorial, what I'm trying to do is give you homework for the next week here. So if you have started this or if you've been following along, save your project, don't remove it. Continue with this particular example. It'll show you through hiding some screens, hooking up screens, replacing screens, reorganizing the screens. Not a bad kind of drill to go through because it really will teach you how to use the controllers and how to navigate. So naming the navigation bar, putting a name on the top of the bar. Navigation bar has a title in here, the things. Table view controller here, adding a title to it. It's basically showing you some functionality that's associated with it. When you're all done with this one, and you get to the end of this tutorial, there's a link here. If you click on the link, you can download a pretty interesting app, and I'm going to show you that app next. It's called hellotabbar.exe. It's the same thing you've been working at, but it's all put together for you. And you can inspect it. Cancel. I don't know what I did there. You know why? It's because I have this virtual machine running. That's why we're having problems today. Let's see. I'm going to close this out. Actually, I'm going to do myself a favor and close this window too. I ran this in a virtual machine, so I have a virtual machine running along with the emulators, along with Xcode. And after the first class, I got enough garbage in my memory. I should have rebooted. Okay, so if we go out to the link that is in the back of that lecture, there's also the file itself that's copied to beahacker.com, and it's in, let me show you where it's at, iOS application development section under example projects. This one is Hello Tab Bar. Hello Tab Bar, which is Tab Bar on steroids, which isn't too bad. It's actually not bad at all. It's a very common looking tab bar application. I've got it downloaded, and I'm going to take a look at it. And it's called Hello Tab Bar. Here it is. You download it, you double zip on the file. Now it's going to run faster because I got rid of that Hello Tab. Oh. So when you open up Hello Tab Bar, it's the same base project that we just left a few minutes ago. And let me make this a little bit smaller so we can see it. Get rid of the side piece here. Oops. It has a tab view in here too. Let's see. Make it bigger. There we go. Here we go. So it's a finished version of what we just looked at with a few more functionality to it. So we have the tab bar controller, and then we have the first navigation controller with a tab view. So the tab view, and this is what I was talking about before, and this is kind of the reason why we're looking at this. This has got the second view controller that's attached to it. This is the first view controller. This is the navigation controller. Well, there's no navigation controller here. It's just a navigation controller that was dragged and dropped into it. So we have a component out here that's just serving as an interface component that goes between the tab bar controller and the the second view. It doesn't have an associated set of files because it doesn't do anything. So it's kind of like what I was trying to do before with those two windows that were kind of connected together. It's just going to show a picture. That's not going to do anything. You don't really need anything for it, which is the case here. And then we have this detailed view controller that's going to show us details. So if we take a look to see what this thing does, and we'll take a look at what the code is doing. Well, this should be running. Let's see. I got rid of the emulator, so I got rid of the other virtual machine, so this should run faster. This one's kind of interesting, and we'll take a look at the source code for it. You could create this quite easily using the other one as a base. The other tutorial isn't going to take you to this one. It's only going to take you like halfway to it. So you probably could just download this project and study this one as an example. But remember, we have the first one, but in the second view controller, the second tab view, we have a table view. Actually, that's the label that we put on the menu bar that we added to it as well, and you'll see how that's done. You click on object 1 and it says this is row 1, this is row 2, this is row 3. Could be your address book. Alright, so you can easily put together, let's say, an address book, telephone numbers, contact list. It's basically what you've got is a table view that's holding a list view inside of it. And we know that because we can take a look at the structure of the storyboard, and we see we have a detailed view that's showing us this is a row that's inside of the table view that's inside of the navigation controller. But it only looks like one screen. 1, 2, this is right call. This is done correctly. This is not a clown in a blender. This one is actually done logically, so it makes sense. Yeah?
Were we just supposed to download Hello Tab Bar and then
Yeah.
open that Xcode project?
Yeah, it's actually right here as well. If the link doesn't work in the lecture, it's under example projects called Hello Tab Bar.
Yeah. And then you just click build and run?
Yeah.
Okay, mine didn't work.
Do you have the iPhone set to, this is a 5.1 simulator. By default, if you don't have 5.1, you might have to change this one to 6.0. This is an older project, so if it didn't work, did it give you an error message?
It doesn't even show up as that. It doesn't even have that interface. It just shows up here.
Nah, let me look at it after the class ends. It doesn't look normal to me.
Yeah.
Does the Word files indicating the steps to make up this? Will follow any?
There is a tutorial on it, but the part of the tutorial that I was finishing or started that I hadn't finished will take you almost to this. There's another PDF file out there that's on one of the workshop sites that will take you to it. It may also be here. If not, I will put it up here when I get a chance. It is buttons project. I haven't uploaded this yet because I wasn't planning on going through the tutorial. Because this is pretty much an extension on the other tutorial that we were looking at. And if you go through the view controllers, did you get a zip file that you downloaded?
You know what? I just have to update my Xcode.
Ah, you might have to update your Xcode. Well, I was going to suggest, here's something else that I might suggest to some people. If you go into the preferences and you click on the downloads tab, and make sure that I've got 6.0 automatically. Download and install 5.0 and 5.1 if you get a chance. Because some of these examples, including the tab view one's an old one, which means you probably don't have the support for the SDK. So if you get strange random problems, it's because you probably don't have the support installed. So if you update the project to include that, then you can actually go backwards further, but for this purposes of this class, my examples are 5.0 or above because everything below 5.0 was significantly different. So when they changed, 5.0 added the storyboard. So when the SDK changed, it was significant to the point where the previous examples wouldn't work. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is when you go out onto the internet to find an example, it's a 3.0, a 2.0. And it's talking about something that doesn't exist anymore. And you load the project type in. If that's the case, I would use the example for the code, create a brand new Xcode project, cut and paste if you can out of the files to see if the code will work. But you're not going to be able to recycle or reuse old project types below 5.0 with this current release. It just doesn't work right. So.
How did you get to that download?
Oh, I clicked on Xcode, Preferences, and then go on the tab that says Downloads. If it says Install here, I don't know if I do it on this network, but go ahead and install it at home or whatever. Mine says installed, which that means is up here on the left-hand side. I have the options here to toggle between 5.0, 5.1, and 6.0 Simulator, but it also gives me support for the SDKs. And as I was mentioning before, you may or may not want to go backwards. It's up to you whether or not you want to go below 5.0. You can actually do it, but that stuff's not worth it. Everything's changed. There's no storyboard in below that, and a lot of there's no property of synthesize before that. There was just weird stuff going on before that. So Xcode has changed significantly. Okay, so that was perhaps maybe one of the problems that you were having. Anyway, so long story short, what we're going to do then is take a quick, not too long, but a quick little view here to see what the first view controller or second view controller and detailed view controller is doing. So the detailed view controller is that single little screen that shows us the information on the clicked item. And we can see we're getting the row number, and the row number is the only thing we're really using because the little label on the menu, label on the window saying, hey, you clicked on row number 1, you clicked on row number 2. So you can see in the .h file we have the property for the row number. If I clicked on the storyboard and actually kind of spaced my screen out, I would see it. Put my editor on here. So the same concept applies. We should be able to hover over, in this particular case it's catching up, but you should see a little dot here and hover over and see that this is actually the item here. Here it is here. It did refresh and you can see that that's the label. And basically what I'm doing here in the detailed view.m file, I'll just put it on the left hand side over here, is our synthesizing row number. And the implementation here is nothing more than there's a, well, for you guys who are in the Objective-C course earlier, this is an initializer. We haven't talked about it in this class yet, but the initializer is initializing it with a nib name. Well, it's identifying the XIB file that's associated with it. Don't worry about that right now. Did receive memory warnings the same as before. View did unload, same as before. Should auto rotate, some new stuff in here. It really isn't doing anything. It's just changing a label essentially, and the label here is just it's really nothing more than showing the row number. In the second view controller, it's just going to look very similar to the first view controller. Here's the .h file for the second view controller, and then the .m file for the second view controller. So we can sort of see the mutable, MS mutable array that we have in here. For those people in the Objective-C class, we have a few special data types that I'm going to be talking about. One of them is that mutable array. So what Objective-C did is, because everything is done dynamically, it took some static concepts like arrays and created the possibility of the array to grow. So we all know when we created an array, it's fixed in size, it doesn't grow. So instead of creating a different way of working with it, it just created a new data type as an object, the NS mutable array, which is actually kind of nice. You treat it just like an array. You add items to it, and there's methods that you perform on it. That sort of like a dynamic array in C++, or Java actually, that you can create an instance of this object, and you can allocate and add. In fact, here's an example of the code right here for it. So it sets up the array, dummy array, add object, object 1, add object, object 2. So some of this code, after you start looking at it for a while, is going to start looking familiar to you, I guarantee it. So the more times you stare at method calls and string initializations and stuff like that, the more you'll be able to actually understand what you're looking at. Okay, so we are kind of pressed, we're getting towards the end here. I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end for questions and stuff. But next week is Martin Luther King Day, which means the campus is closed. So I'm not going to see you guys until another week. So there's no class next week, and for those people who are in the workshop, you get an extra Monday. You still get 5 Mondays. Actually, quite honestly, you can take more Mondays if you want. I don't mind. I'm not going to be counting. However, I just want to let you know I'm not going to rip you off by a Monday just because campus is closed. But I can't hold class because there's not going to be anybody here. So it means you got 2 weeks before I'm going to see you again. So what does that mean? I'm going to load you up with some stuff to do. So go ahead and finish that tutorial on the tab view. Look at the hello bar, tab bar. Try to modify a little bit. Play around with creating single view applications. Play around with, I'm going to stop this task here. Playing around as much as possible in creating miscellaneous applications. See what you can do. If you get extremely bored and you want direction, I've got a bunch of tutorials I'm going to lead you to in a minute here, as soon as I open up the window. One of the things you could do is review some of the stuff for the Objective-C course, but if you're in that class, this is supplemental to that. So if you go into the bhacker.com website, whoops, not this one, this one. It's like that's CSU East Bay. So if you go into this one, if you go into iOS application development, and if you go into example projects, there's project number 1, there's project number 2. One of them, actually you did one, the scroll view example. There's some cool stuff in here where you can load some pictures in, and you can go from one view to another view. These are all stuff that I'm going to be doing in the class, but at a faster pace. So if you want to work ahead, then it might prepare you to ask more questions. Might actually give you an edge, actually. Project 1, Project 2, practice with GUI controls tutorial, practice with GUI control solution. This is the one we just looked at. Basic projects. If we go into the basic projects, if I download this file, you see there's a bunch of stuff in here. Stuff that's in here, where does it go? Here it is. If I unzip it, there we go. We have a tab demo web view. If you're interested, you can actually put I'm going to go through all this stuff, but much faster. You can put you can create an application that loads up a website. Not a bad one. Web pages, hello world, send mail. I'm going to go through send mail next time. The map kit, I'll be going through that stuff. But if you want to play around, I suggest these tutorials only because I know they work. And they're straightforward. There's nothing tricky about them. If you go and through some of the books that I recommended, some of them actually have some nice tutorials as well. I like tutorials because you get your feet wet. And in this, you can't just listen to me talk and understand how to program it. You actually, and it's fun to create stuff. And you might have some ideas about some apps that you want to create, because eventually I'm going to give you some freedom to start creating some apps. And I'm hoping that next time I'm not going to be talking for the entire time, because it gets kind of tiring. So instead, I'm going to give you guys stuff to do, walk around and help you do it, which is a little bit more interesting. But for the first couple of meetings, I end up talking a lot, which is too much for me. But anyway, long story short, enjoy your weekend off. Don't forget everything. Anyone showing up on Saturday? I have Java on Saturday. You guys are going to Saturday? That'll be fun. 8 hours a day for 2 days straight. Not me talking all the time either. I can't talk for 8 hours a day. That'll be fun. This coming up Saturday and Sunday. This weekend coming up is Java programming for Android developers. Yeah. All right, thank you. See you in 2 weeks. If you do have questions, you can always send me an email message and I can answer your questions. Oh, okay. Let me get your info.
This project.
Yes.
I was able to connect those to third and fourth view. Like how to do that? Like,
You press on the tab controller, and you hold down the control key, and you drag it. Oops, let me turn this off. You drag it to the